Neil McCabe is on the line with us. He's a conservative commentator and editor of the Guns and Patriot newsletter for Human Events. Gunsandpatriots.com is the website. Neil, welcome back.
Hey, good to be with you, Tom.
Thanks for joining us. Let me play for you Ricardo Martinez, the father of one of the people who was murdered over this past weekend by this crazed gunman. Here he is.
Our son Christopher Martinez and 6 others are dead. Our family has a message for every parent out there. You don't think it'll happen to your child until it does. Chris was a really great kid. Ask anyone who knew him. His death has left our family lost and broken. Why did Chris die? Chris died because of craven, irresponsible politicians and the NRA. They talk about gun rights. What about Chris's right to live?
Neil, what about the right of Americans to live in a society where you don't have to confront somebody wearing an AR-15 when you walk into a Starbucks?
Well, I think that, first of all, it's unfortunate that that parent's grief is plugged into the politics of this, and this is a
no. It's absolutely to the issue, Neil. The politics.
Let's talk about this, Tom.
The politics that you guys created.
You can pass the laws you want, right? But the son of a millionaire Hollywood director and pornographer is going to get a hold of a gun, and so those people who were shot.
It ain't happening in Australia, Neil. They had 18 mass slaughters, and in 1979 or 1998 they said enough, and they did a national gun buyback program. They put into place really strong regulations on guns. They regulate guns actually more. I'm just calling to regulate guns the way we regulate cars, but they do it much more rigorously than that. There hasn't been a single mass slaughter since then. You know
that if first of all, there are certain places that you wouldn't even attempt this. There are certain parts of this country where you don't go on a spree shooting like this because you know someone's going to take you down.
I don't think that's true. Are you talking about places like Colorado?
Well, I mean, you're talking about Colorado, a gun-free theater. He drove by 6 or 7 theaters where guns were allowed. But I mean, you're talking about Australia. Let's talk about in America. If there was someone in that crowd who was armed, let alone a police officer or someone else, somebody would have done something.
You know, the last time the cops went after a guy who was trying to be a mass shooter, they hit 2 of the civilians, and these were trained police officers.
Well, sure, but you know, it was an MP who was armed at Fort Hood who took down the Fort Hood shooter. But you know, if there were somebody armed in that crowd, I'm guessing that Santa Barbara was a gun-free campus, gun-free zone. We now have a law passed in Idaho.
Why not have a gun-free country, Neil?
Oh, really, Tom?
Yeah.
Where's it?
Why don't we join the rest of the civilized world?
Well, first of all, guns are...
What is so unique about America that we've got to have so many guns that we lead the world in gun deaths?
Well, Tom, murder has nothing to do with guns, right? I mean, if someone's going to murder somebody, I mean...
Impulsive murder with guns. If you remove guns, and you know this, you've seen the research, in those places where guns are removed, suicide rates drop in half and murder rates drop a little more than a third, because they're crimes of impulse. And if you grab a knife or a baseball bat, you may do some damage to somebody, or if you overdose on pills, you might die. But if you put a gun to your temple, you're gonna be dead.
The population of Santa Barbara, and certainly that campus, was disarmed. And look what happened.
This is not because people were disarmed, Neil. It's because we live in a society that is awash in guns.
This kid, right, this is son of the elite who is able to get a hold of a gun.
Oh, so you're going to blame it on the elite? Seriously?
Well, I'm just saying, my point is that someone who's a member of the elite is always going to get a hold of a gun.
So let's ban rich people. Is that what you're suggesting?
What I'm saying is...
You want to sign on to nomoorebillionaires.com?
It's a fool. To zero out guns is impossible. It's not going to happen. And so, if you
how did they pull this off in Australia then?
I don't know. Not an expert on what happened in
How
Australia.
did they pull it off in Belgium or in the Netherlands? or Sweden.
I can speak to America. And in America, you're not going to zero out the guns, not in your lifetime or my lifetime.
But but to paraphrase Jack Kennedy, it may not happen in your lifetime or my lifetime, but we should begin.
Yeah, we should begin. Well, why don't we begin allowing people to have guns so that they have a fighting chance when some maniac shows up at their campus?
Because
instead of just saying
there were, when Gabby Giffords was shot, there were two guys with guns in that crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, carrying guns, and they couldn't stop that shooter because they very easily could have killed somebody else. They were well trained enough that they knew you do not fire into a crowd, even if you're trying to take out a bad guy.
Obviously, there's judgment there, Tom, but there's no obligation to be a victim, and I've said this to you before. And so it's like, you can quote me all the statistics you want. If that crazy kid shows up in his BMW and starts shooting, I would rather have a gun to be able to shoot at him. I don't know why that's outrageous to you.
Because he shouldn't have had the gun in the first place.
Well, yeah,
or if he did, somebody should have a liability insurance policy on it. And then the insurance companies are going to start looking carefully at who they're writing these policies for.
If he's shooting at you, Tom, if he's shooting at you, what do? You hold up your insurance policy. You say, hold on, this is a gun-free zone. You're not allowed
My
in
point is, if we regulated guns the way we regulate cars, then people who are mentally ill, like this kid was, and he was under the treatment of several different therapists. Just like right now, there are some people who can't get insurance for their car, thus they can't drive because they have too many drunken driving convictions.
I think this kid's a poor example because this kid was always going to get a break, and this kid was always going to have a father who was going to do things for him.
So we're back to the elite. It's rich people's fault, especially if they live in Hollywood.
Exactly.
Okay. Neil McCabe, gunsandpatriots.com. Neil, good talking with you. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Tom.
Bye.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So, whose fault was this? Really?